Novak Djokovic is now 3 majors away from the total count of Roger Federer and only 2 away from that of Rafa Nadal. And on top of that, Novak has done this by winning an 8th. That is, remember, we all loved when Roger Federer won his 8th Wimbledon. We were all amazed when Rafa won his 8th of now a total 12 French Opens. So we need to credit Novak on winning an 8th Australian Open. That alone is incredible, but what is most incredible to me is Dominic Thiem put up much more of a fight than most people would have given him a chance to, and Novak Djokovic, for the first time in his career, came back from a 2-1 deficit. Yet today, most tennis fans are not very happy about this result. In fact, most tennis fans really wished that Novak would have lost yesterday. And while I was very much wishing Novak would have lost in the Wimbledon final, not just last year, but 2014, 2015.Day, I actually feel pretty happy for Novak Djokovic, and I think it's about time that we start to give him a little credit. There was a great article by a fella named Kevin Palmer in the Tennis 365, over at Tennis 365, the website. And the title of it is Why Tennis Fans Will Never Forgive Novak Djokovic for His Biggest Crime. And of course, his biggest crime is messing up the Roger and Rafa show. I remember I was fortunate enough to, at 2007 Miami, I was there for the final to see Djokovic beat Guillermo Cañas, and I thought it was pretty cool. I liked Djokovic. That was the first tennis match I ever got to see in person. So I liked Djokovic from the beginning. I especially liked when Djokovic started beating Rafa all of the time. I really enjoyed that, but by 2014 and 2015, I started to hate Novak Djokovic. He ruined those Wimbledons for all of the Federer fans. But if you think about Novak Djokovic, his story is typically the kind of story that we all love. You know, the person that comes from nothing and achieves the highest heights of success and overcomes the most impossible odds, like what he did, making the conversation in tennis. The entire sport was about Roger and Rafa, and he made it the big 3. We got to give Novak Djokovic credit because that is one of the most amazing things we have seen in tennis. And if he keeps winning majors, he may be number 1 of the big 3 and make Roger and Rafa a close second and third. If that were to happen, it would be, I already say all the time that this is the most entertaining and amazing storyline in all of sports. Dominic Thiem himself said it in his press conference that it's the greatest story in all of sport, the big 3, what they do. It's the most amazing thing in sports, period. Any sport. That's what Dominic Thiem said, and I think he's right. So we got to give the guy some credit. If Djokovic is able to be on top of the most amazing thing, the big 3, in all of the history of sports, that might make Djokovic the greatest athlete of all time. On top of overcoming Roger and Rafa, there was a great tweet from Ben Rothenberglers over at the New York Times on Twitter during the match, and he said the crowd favorites at any tennis match are number 1, Roger Federer, number 2, Rafa Nadal, and this is great, number 3, whoever is playing Djokovic. When I first started Coffee Break Tennis, one of the first things I talked about was the Djokovic theorem. The theorem was originally that Djokovic is going to be too bogged down mentally by all of the people cheering against him for so many years, everywhere he goes in the world pretty much, that it's going to break him mentally and he won't be able to keep up with Roger and Rafa ultimately. That was my theory. Over time, I can't remember if it was a year or 2, but it became pretty obvious to me that the theory might have been totally backwards. My new Djokovic theorem is Novak Djokovic is becoming the most mentally tough athlete of all time because of what he's had to go through. Just think, he's the only top player who regularly, almost every big match, almost every match that is important for Djokovic, when he double faults, the crowd mostly cheers it. Even just when he misses a first serve, he's got to put up with people clapping for him missing a first serve. It's the ultimate insult in tennis. In many ways, I feel like Roger and Rafa fans are all to blame, myself included, for why Novak Djokovic has become the most mentally tough, with endless reserves to draw upon, the most mentally tough athlete in the sport of tennis, maybe in all sports in general. I did a song when Roger won 19. I did a song when Roger won 20. I even did a song for the Rafa fans and Rafa Nadal at the French Open last year. And I know for some Federer and Nadal fans out there, you may not want to hear it, but I had to do a song for Djokovic this time.
and I'll probably won't be able to comprehend the achievements I had in my career, especially at Grand Slams, until I retire from tennis.
Athletes of all time. He inspired myself and many other people around the world. He was there for me. He was my mentor, my friend, and to hear what has happened to him and his daughter, it's unbelievable.
Now I've done a song for all of the big three. All right, Mr. Goat, I have to pay up 5 green fish. Dropped one. I bet Mr. Goat 5 green fish if he won. If he lost, he was going to clean his own litter box for a week. I bet him that I would get at least 4,000 views on a women's final video. And he said, no chance, nobody cares about women's tennis. So Mr. Goat, the talking tennis cat, wins. Today on the show, we will talk about where things are today for Roger, Rafa, and the rest of the field. We'll talk a little bit about how the rest of the year looks to me now. We'll also talk about Dominic Thiem and Novak Djokovic's match. I'll break down a few of the keys to the match for you, and we'll talk about some of the controversies that have come from this and some of the stuff I hear people saying on Twitter. And I just feel like if you watch Coffee Break Tennis, you like to be informed. You like to know how things really are on the tennis tour. So I want to set the record straight on a couple of things. All of that. Oh, and also Mats Wilander is already counting all of Novak Djokovic's future slams as well and giving him the GOAT already. So we'll talk about that too. Nothing else on today's show. All right, first up, let's look at my match notes and talk about some of the key moments. The first set didn't surprise anyone. What did Djokovic go up 4-0? He at least went up 3-0 in the first set. He was just crushing Dominic Thiem, and I'll say there was a couple things that really stood out to me. One, I thought, okay, this is over in straight sets. I was more right than I thought. I went going into the match. If you saw me talk about my expectations, my previews to the final, I felt like Dominic Thiem would simply not have enough left. You know, if Novak had to play Rafa in the semifinal, and let's say Roger, an injured Roger was who Dominic Thiem had to get through in the semi instead of Sasha Zverev. If some kind of mix like that happens, you can easily see Dominic Thiem being the fresher of the two and Djokovic never, ever being able to survive the moments where he had to drink the magic potion and all of that stuff, right? Remember that? How does Djokovic get through those tough moments if Dominic Thiem has more energy than what he already had? So in the first set, I thought, wow, Thiem has even less in the tank than I thought he did. But what it turned out to be, Dominic Thiem, I think he was just simply nervous. It just seems like he was nervous because by the end of the first set, first off, Dominic Thiem is able to make it more competitive than how it looks like it's going to be in the first 3-4 games. And then in the second set, it becomes pretty obvious that, Dominic Thiem actually does have enough in the tank to play good enough defense to stay alive in these rallies and have a chance to start using his forehand. The number one thing for me in the first set, Novak Djokovic would not let Dominic Thiem hit forehands, at least not from a position that he wanted to hit them from. You never in the first set saw Dominic Thiem set up to just, go to town ripping his forehand. That never happened. You saw Dominic Thiem stuck in the backhand corner, and when Thiem did hit a forehand, it was a forehand on the run, and he never really got to set his legs, set his feet, and rip. Full credit to Djokovic on the first set there. In the second set, not only does Dominic Thiem start to show us that he's got more energy, more legs, more gas in the tank than we would have thought after the first set, but he also starts to play good enough defense, hit his backhand well enough. One thing throughout the match, Dominic Thiem never had the backhand up the line working. This was a thing that we saw at the World Tour Finals. He had a few big backhands up the line and big moments that helped him, But overall, it was a big problem. Couldn't hit a backhand up the line very well. And in the second set, he started not to aim so close to the line when he went backhand up the line, and he really just started to hit it big enough cross court to where he did get looks at more and more forehands and was starting to push Djokovic. And then, of course, the 4-all game in the second set. This is one of the biggest keys to the match. And if Dominic Thiem would have won, this would be the moment that we would all point to when it all changed. This is, of course, when Novak Djokovic gets the time violation on the serve clock. This is very interesting, and I'm curious to see in the future at the other majors, are we going to see the shot clock, the serve clock, enforced like this? The rule is the rule going to be enforced so strictly? We saw it with Rafa Nadal, ironically, against Dominic Thiem as well. And it was one of the moments where things kind of turned for Rafa and, really started to look bad after that. And things really looked bad for Novak after that. A lot of people watching this match probably believed in Dominic Thiem winning it for a large chunk of it. And it all started here. And, I can understand why Rafa and Novak, they both got just as mad. I can understand why they would be so upset. It's funny, everyone's making such a fuss about Novak putting his hand on the shoe of the umpire, but Rafa put his hand on the shoulder of the supervisor. I guess with the chair umpire, it's a little different. It's a little more serious, but to me, neither one of them are really that big of a deal, and I understand why they're mad, but now they're going to have to adapt, because if the majors keep calling the serve clock so strictly like this, in the past, as long as you were in the motion, you were starting to toss, by the time the clock went to 0, they wouldn't call you it. Well, now they've called both Rafa and Novak, number 1 and 2 in the world, they've called them mid-service motion on this rule. Some people think this is great, long overdue. Some people think it wasn't fair. I think it's okay. Novak should not have let the second call come, what cost him a first serve. Of course, he double faults. Dominic Thiem gets the break of serve for 5-4, serves it out. The match is totally different now. The third set is where all the momentum just completely shifts for real. The second set is a big deal for Thiem to win it. But if Djokovic wins the third set, everyone goes right back to saying, Djokovic is going to win. It's inevitable. Dominic Thiem never had a chance all along. Thiem is playing better and better and really looking like he can win it. Djokovic is like trying to find himself and is having meltdown after meltdown, panic after panic set in. And the one thing that stands out to me, two things. We see Dominic Thiem hit many more forehands in the third and second set, of course. And we see Djokovic stuffing his face. Take a listen to audio of Novak Djokovic asked, what is that mix? If you've been following me for a long time, when I was at Cincinnati a couple years ago, there was a match that Djokovic almost lost to Adrian Mannarino in Cincinnati. And I videoed the ball kid taking the bottle, giving it to the coach of Djokovic, and then them mixing the magic potion. I joked that it was Joker's magic potion. Maybe Djokovic watches Coffee Break Tennis, because take a listen to what he said in the press.
On your well-being during the match on the TV screen, it was shown that your team mixed something up, a drink or powder stuff, in each set, and Ball Boys was bringing it to you. Just wonder what it was.
The liquids were magic potions that my physio Uli prepares in his lab. That's all I can say.
So in the third set, we see Djokovic eating the energy gel, eating the dates, drinking water, drinking magic potion. He's literally just stuffing his face. It's pretty wild to see Djokovic putting so much stuff into his mouth during this third set. But obviously, he had to do it, and he knew it, and it got his legs back. A lot of people are calling this a tactic. Same with the medical timeout. Djokovic went to take a medical timeout. And a lot of people are calling this like a tactic. I don't understand why this would ever be a tactic to start losing a match intentionally, or even if that's not what they're trying to say. They're just saying to look like you're out of breath and you're down and out. Take a listen. From when Djokovic touches the foot, the number one takeaway I had that shocked me was listen to how out of breath Novak sounds when he's yelling at the umpire. And again, I'm not going to get mad. I know there's a lot of Federer and Nadal fans out there who are so mad at Djoker. We've seen Rafa yell at the umpire in this tournament. We've seen Roger yell at the umpire in this tournament. And now we've seen Djokovic. We got to be consistent here. If you're like me and you like Roger better, or if you like Rafa better, if you're like Ollie, we got to be consistent here. We can't be mad at Djokovic and then give Rafa and or Roger a pass on this. To me, all three are the same. But take a listen. Listen to how out of breath Djokovic is. It's pretty obvious to me this is not a tactic. The dude was literally out of breath, and he was literally he was struggling. He called the medical timeout because he was struggling. Take a listen.
Good job, man. Especially in the second one. Great job. You made yourself famous. Well done. Mission accomplished.
Pretty obvious something is going on. And since I play tennis at a pretty high level, nothing close to what Novak Djokovic plays or anybody in the ATP Tour, but I'm sure I play a higher level than the majority of the people watching this video. And I have done the gluten-free Djokovic-style diet in the past. I've done all kinds of things to try to get the most out of my own game. Lately, I haven't been eating like that at all, but I can tell you when I used to, you will run out of energy because of the diet. And Djokovic's diet is much stricter than any diet I've ever been on. But I've been pretty close. You know, I had a very strict diet and was in very good shape a few years ago. When you're on a diet that strict, when you're not eating any gluten, Djokovic is mostly, take a look at this headline, is mostly plant-based. I know I've heard he's eating fish and chicken now, which you got to do it because it's really hard to do it with no meat. But still, when you have such a restrictive diet as Novak Djokovic, you sometimes in these matches will be lightheaded. It's happened to me plenty of times to know it's real. There's a thing called Lara bars, Lara, if you're a tennis player or some kind of athlete. Might want to look into it. They're mostly made of dates. We see Djokovic doing the dates a lot. So what I used to do is I would have to eat one of these Lara bars on a changeover in my matches that I play. When I was on the restrictive diet, I would get lightheaded and dizzy. Exact same thing we've heard Djokovic complain about. It's happened to me before, and I would have to eat the Lara bars with the dates and drink some kind of, electrolyte mix. There's a lot of drinks out there. They're basically like Gatorade, except you don't have a ton of sugar. You don't need 40 grams of sugar in the middle of a tennis match. So there's lots of drinks. That's what those powders, concoctions are. Take a listen to Novak. I played the audio of Novak earlier, calling it a magic potion, kind of joking. Andre Agassi had his own secret formula. It's probably got electrolytes. They probably add salt. You actually need salt. These drinks are about not sweating out more. I think Djokovic said he doesn't know. He did the same thing. In the medical timeout, Djokovic said that they informed him he was dehydrated, and he said, I don't know why. I drank a lot of fluids like I have every match. Why am I dehydrated now? Like I said before this match, Djokovic hadn't played in the very humid conditions. All the commentators were talking about it. As I said, the final, it would be colder and more humid with slower conditions. It was. You sweat more in the humidity. You lose more fluids. So I'm guessing that's why it affected him more so in this match. Plus, he was, Djokovic, the main thing, forget the humidity. No one challenged Djokovic the whole tournament the way Dominic Thiem did. Federer gave him a scare in the first set. Struff took one set off of him, but I don't think it scared him very much in the first round of the tournament. No one really made Djokovic work as hard as he had to in that match, Dominic Thiem. So credit more humid conditions, slower conditions, and an opponent in Dominic Thiem. That is why Djokovic was suffering. So I just want to clear that up. The reason why, if you're saying, Matt, why does Djokovic do this stupid diet then where he has to drink all these drinks and is like running out of energy and getting lightheaded? It's a trade-off for Djokovic because this diet reduces inflammation and speeds up recovery. This helps Djokovic train as hard as he does and play as hard as he does. I think Djokovic is really smart on this. I prefer the Roger Federer approach where you do everything in moderation and you have ice cream cones with your team after your quarterfinal victory. But I got to credit Djokovic. It's clearly working. It helps him recover in between matches. And if his team's got to mix up some magic potions for him sometimes in big matches and he's got to chug it down and shove stuff in his mouth on the changeovers, I think the trade-off is worth it, and Djokovic should keep it up, stick to the plan. It's clearly working for him. So when we get to the fourth set, the good news for Thiem and everyone who wanted Djokovic to lose, and hey, don't get me wrong, I'm happy for Djokovic, but I also would have been very happy if Dominic Thiem won. I would have been happy for Thiem, and I would have been really happy for Roger Federer, feeling like, one, if Thiem can beat Novak here, he might beat Rafa at the French. So for a Federer fan, it'd be like, Joker's no closer. Maybe his confidence is hurt at Wimbledon, and Federer is more likely to beat him after this devastating loss. And you feel like maybe Rafa does not tie 20 this year and is not able to win any majors. So as a Federer fan, of course, I wasn't against the idea of Djokovic losing. But credit to Djokovic and credit to Thiem, because in the fourth set, Thiem is still battling, and it still looks like he can win this thing. But Djokovic is obviously getting better. You can tell pretty early There's a game where Dominic Thiem has a chance to break early, and Djokovic comes up with some serve and volleys coming to the net. It kind of saves him. There was danger, but then you sensed it right there. Okay, the magic potion is kicking in. We've seen this so many times. I told you about in Cincinnati. We saw the Millman match with Djokovic. He was struggling a little bit. Wasn't like he looked like he was in real danger to losing, but he had a dip. Millman broke him and took a lead, I think, and then the magic potion came out. We've seen it other places as well. We may have even seen it at Wimbledon in the epic with Federer last year. I can't remember for sure, but yeah, didn't Djokovic go down like 5-0 in the second set? I think the magic potion came out around that time, somewhere in the second set. So we've seen it so many times. We all knew. It was pretty obvious in the fourth set he was coming back, but the thing was Dominic Thiem was still playing well enough to maybe win regardless if he could just keep the momentum and find a way to win that fourth set. This is where, put it on the screen, everything changed for me. 3-4, 15-all, fourth set. Dominic Thiem has this volley. He's this close to the net. You can't see too well in the picture, but in one of the two pictures I have of this, you can see Djokovic's feet. He's out of position. He's over in the deuce side corner. And if Dominic can hit a drop volley in the ad service box, or if Dominic could just stick a solid volley into the ad return side corner. If Thiem makes this shot, I think he holds serve and he's got a chance. But instead, he has his serve broken here. And to me, he never looks like the Dominic Thiem who can win for the rest of the match. From this moment, this is the last time I see a point with Dominic Thiem and think he can still win this thing. It became obvious to me that he finally, as I predicted, I said he would win one set and then not have enough gas, whether it be first or second or third set. I thought Thiem would get one. Well, no one saw Djokovic having his struggles pop up, which we just spent plenty of time talking about. And when this shot, Dominic Thiem misses this volley, has his serve broken, and we go to a fifth set, that's when you knew it was over for Dominic Thiem. And in my match notes regarding the fifth set, last thing here, here's a stat that told you everything you needed to know. In the fourth set, in long rallies, 8 out of 9 points that were long rallies, I'm guessing 8 or more shots, Dominic Thiem lost 8 out of 9. In the fifth set, it looked like the first set again. I would say Dominic Thiem wasn't nervous and was really fighting hard, but Dominic Thiem was out of gas. You could tell that he gave up trying to hit forehands. He wasn't running around his backhand. He realized Djokovic is going to force me to hit a bunch of backhands, just like in the first set, and I don't have enough energy to run around my backhand and try to hit forehands. I've got to just try to hit good backhands. And then again, we started seeing him go for backhands up the line and missing the shot. It wasn't there for most of the night. And then it almost looked like Federer when he was injured. Going to the forehand side, Dominic Thiem looked even worse than in the first set. Dominic Thiem looked kind of slow running to his forehand. As I predicted, all of the wear and tear, all of the tennis that Dominic Thiem had to go through, it was ultimately too much for him to beat the king of Australia in this final. One thing, take a listen to this. This is Mats Wilander.
But it's getting closer and closer, and suddenly when Novak gets an Australian Open, he usually has a good year that follows. So winning here, does that make him the favorite at Wimbledon where he's defending? Yes, that's 18. Makes him the favorite at the US Open if he wins. That's 19. I mean, at the end of the year, we could literally have 2 players on 20 or 2 players on 19 and 1 on 20 or even more. Novak could win all 4. So this is a huge win for him going forwards.
I will say one thing about that, and then we'll talk about how things look moving forwards, and then we'll get out of here. Mats, come on. You can't give the guy. This is what everyone made this big mistake. You heard in my Djokovic song, talk about how Djokovic almost won it all in 2015. In 2016, he finally gets his French Open. He wins the first 2. Everyone was predicting the Grand Slam for Novak, but it didn't happen. You can't, Mats, I mean, haven't you been covering the sport long enough, and Djokovic for that matter? You can't go ahead and give him Wimbledon already. This always backfires. Honestly, the way Federer was able to get to the semifinal with all he had to go through with the Australian Open, every Federer fan was so excited for the fast conditions of Australian Open, but it looks like the courts were slowed down a little, and the weather, especially at night matches with the lower temperatures, it was crazy. As McEnroe said, he's been going to the Australian Open for so many years now, he's never seen it this cold. Anyone who goes to the Australian Open could tell you that. So for Federer to still come through and make it a semifinal, for Federer to be injured and still challenge Djokovic in that first set, at least, he hit some incredible shots. I thought it was amazing from Federer. Roger Federer very well could stop Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon, and there's no guarantee that Djokovic can win the French Open. But with that said, I got to admit, Djokovic could win all 4 this year. It could happen. And here's how I see it happening. It's all about the French Open draw now. It's very important that Roger Federer does what he's got to win Dubai. Or if he doesn't win Dubai, then he's got to win Miami again. Or he's got to win Indian Wells this time. Or he's got to make the finals of both. Federer's got to hang on to some points or pick up some points on clay, but he's probably not going to. It's hard to imagine Federer doing better than the semifinals at the French Open. So Federer's going to have points disappear somewhere. He's got to hang on to a top 4 ranking for Wimbledon. He can't play Djokovic or Nadal in the semifinals. I mean, before the semifinals. And Dominic Thiem is going to have to play for a chance to take number 2. Dominic Thiem is very close to number 3 now, just behind Federer. If Dominic Thiem can pick up some points, he did really bad at Monte Carlo last year. I believe he also did really bad in Rome. If Dominic Thiem could win a couple Masters 1000s on clay, if he can defend his Indian Wells title or do well enough at both Indian Wells and Miami, there is a chance that Dominic Thiem goes to the French Open as the number 2 seed. If this happens and Rafa is pushed down to 3, there is a really good chance that 1, Djokovic plays Rafa. I mean, it's a coin flip. It's 50-50. This French Open is going to be very interesting, especially with this draw and whether or not Dominic Thiem can get to number 2 between now and then. I don't know if he can. It's going to be tough because Rafa didn't exactly crush it on the tune-up clay events before. You know, what if Rafa wins Monte Carlo? He's going to be the number 2 seed then at the French Open. Djokovic is definitely number 1. That's locked up. Federer can hang on to number 4. He will likely lose number 3 to Dominic Thiem, but he can hang on to number 4 with Medvedev. Medvedev is in range to take it away from Federer, but Federer's got to drop over 1,000 points. If Federer can hang on to enough points, he's looking really good for Wimbledon, I think. And if Rafa can hang on to number 2, that's going to help because just think about this with Rafa. If Rafa has to play Dominic Thiem in the semifinals and then play Novak Djokovic in the final, you got to give Djokovic a great chance to win the French Open. Obviously, everyone's going to expect Nadal to win one more and tie Federer. But if Nadal has to play Dominic Thiem in the semifinals, 1, he could lose. I think Dominic Thiem did so well at the Australian Open, he's going to go to the French with even more confidence than ever before. If Dominic Thiem is in that semifinal with Rafa, there's a good chance that either Thiem or Rafa come out of that match, 5-set epic, they play Djokovic in the final, and they lose to Djokovic. And then all of a sudden, Djokovic has 2 in a row, and we're looking at a chance for Djokovic to win all 4, potentially. It's possible. On the other hand, if Dominic Thiem and Djokovic play in the semifinal, we could see the same thing from last year. Maybe we see Dominic Thiem just be so amazing he beats both of them. It's possible, but you definitely favor Rafa. If Rafa loses his number 2 ranking and then either has to play Dominic Thiem in the semifinal or Djokovic in the semifinal, and then has the other one waiting for him in the final, there's a very good chance that Rafa is not able to beat both of those guys back to back. For Roger, it's kind of the same deal. He's got to stay top 4, so he's not having to play Novak or Rafa in the quarterfinals. That would be not something Roger would want to do at Wimbledon. So it's pretty important for Roger as well to hang on to some rankings points, and he's got a lot of stuff to defend. Hit the music. Thank you for watching Coffee Break Tennis throughout the Australian Open. It has been a pleasure to do this show for you, and I thank you very much. It's such a thrill for me that you guys are always here and showing up, watching this show. It's been a long Australian Open for me, so I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break from Coffee Break Tennis, but I think we'll be back this week sometime, and we will catch you up on the latest news, especially if something truly big happens. See ya!
We all grew up in different circumstances, in different countries, different upbringing. My upbringing was in Serbia during several wars during 90s, and difficult time and embargo in our country where we had to wait in line for bread and milk and water and some basic things in life, these kind of things that make you stronger and make you hungrier for success, I think, in whatever you choose to do. And that probably has been my foundation. You know, the very fact that I came from literally nothing and difficult life circumstances together with my family and with my people, and going back to that and reminding myself where I came from always inspires me, you know, motivates me to push even harder, and so that's probably one of the reasons why I managed to find that extra gear or necessary, I guess, mental strength